Have you been doing gentle exercises to stay fit and to wake up one morning feeling off, dizzy, or unable to move like you used to? For seniors over 60, the routines meant to protect your health could, in some cases, quietly put your brain at risk. I've spent over 3 decades as a neurologist treating stroke patients, and the stories that stay with me aren't always linked to poor diets or smoking. They come from something far more unexpected: routine movement. Simple stretches and senior-safe workouts, when done incorrectly or at the wrong time, can suddenly spike blood pressure, overstrain delicate blood vessels, and increase the risk of clots, especially during sleep. The result can be devastating, with no warning. You may feel fine during the day, then wake up unable to speak or walk. That's why today, I'm sharing 9 common movements that may be far more dangerous than you think. This isn't fear, it's prevention, and it could make all the difference. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. 1. Toe touches and forward bends. A sudden drop in blood pressure might not seem like a big deal. In fact, bending forward to stretch your back, reaching for your toes, or picking something up off the floor may feel like part of a healthy daily routine. You've probably done it for years without giving it a second thought. But when you're over 60, that same motion can quietly trigger something much more serious, a hidden threat to your brain. In my years as a neurologist working with older adults, I've seen far too many cases where this simple act became the beginning of a stroke. As we get older, our bodies don't respond to changes in position the way they used to. The sensors in our arteries, called baroreceptors, that help regulate blood flow to the brain, gradually lose sensitivity with age. So when you bend forward quickly, blood rushes away from your head, and your body may not respond fast enough to bring it back. You might feel a wave of dizziness, or nothing at all. But inside, your brain may be starved of oxygen, setting the stage for slowed circulation, thicker blood, and in some cases, clot formation. I once treated a patient named Harold Levine, age 76, a retired postal worker from Oregon. Harold liked to start his mornings with a few stretches, touching his toes just like he did when he was younger. He felt it kept him limber. One morning, after his usual routine, he brushed off a brief moment of lightheadedness. That afternoon, while sweeping his porch, he collapsed. When he arrived at the hospital, he could barely move his left side. A small ischemic stroke had affected the motor center of his brain. His blood pressure had dropped earlier that morning, and lab results showed he was mildly dehydrated. It traced back to those toe touches. His body couldn't compensate for the postural change, and a clot quietly formed. Harold eventually learned to walk again with help, but the use of his hand never fully returned. He told me later, "I thought I was staying healthy. I didn't know something so small could cause something so big." This is the message many seniors never hear. Movement isn't the enemy, but understanding how your body changes is essential. What felt right at 40 may carry real risk at 70. And if a simple stretch can bring this much danger, imagine what happens when blood is forced into the brain during an inversion pose. Let's explore the serious risks of downward-facing yoga next. 2. Inverted yoga. Poses brain pressure imbalance. For many older adults, yoga has become a symbol of balance and graceful ajinga, chance to move gently, breathe deeply, and reconnect with the body. You've likely seen it at the local rec center or in a community class, where seniors gather in chairs or on mats, guided by calming voices and soft music. And in many ways, gentle yoga can be a gift. But there's one type of pose that quietly carries serious risks, especially for aging brains. Most people are never warned about it. I'm talking about inversion poses, things like legs up the wall, downward dog, or even simple forward folds where the head drops below the heart. These movements are often described as relaxing, but for older adults, they can trigger a dangerous shift in circulation. When blood rushes suddenly toward the head, and the brain's pressure regulating system isn't as responsive as it once was, the result can be swelling, pressure spikes, or even rupture in delicate vessels. By the time we reach our 60s and beyond, many of us carry silent risk factors: stiff arteries, fragile vessel walls, years of blood pressure issues. One unexpected change in blood flow can lead to clots or even bleeding in areas of the brain that don't heal easily. I remember a woman named Louise Carter, age 75, a retired music librarian from Michigan. Louise attended her senior yoga class every week without fail. She loved the community, the calm atmosphere, the way it made her feel connected. But during one session, she joined in a pose where the legs were lifted and the head angled down. She felt a strange pressure behind her eyes, but didn't say anything. That night, her neighbor found her disoriented, unable to form words. In the hospital, doctors discovered a small brain-bleeding intracranial hemorrhage, likely caused by that sudden inversion. Her medication and age had created the perfect storm. Louise survived, but her speech was never the same. She now uses written notes to help communicate. What happened to her could have been avoided with better awareness, better instruction, and a better understanding that gentle does not always mean safe. The blood vessels in your brain today aren't what they were decades ago. They need care, not pressure. And inversions aren't the only hidden danger. In the next part, we'll look at a common daily activity that spikes pressure even faster: lifting. It's not just how much weight you carry, it's how you carry it. Let's talk about that next. 3. Heavy lifting. There's a quiet pride in staying strong as you age. Carrying your own bags, lifting a grandchild, helping around the house. These little acts of strength remind you that you're still capable, still independent. But what many older adults don't realize is that even these simple motions, especially when done with strain or held breath, can create a dangerous spike in blood pressure, setting the stage for a stroke. You don't need to lift anything heavy to trigger it. I've seen strokes unfold after someone lifted a hose, a suitcase, or even a loaded purse. It's not just the weight, it's the internal pressure. The real danger comes when you instinctively hold your breath during a lifter reflex known as the Valsalva maneuver. This builds pressure in the chest, sending a rapid surge through the arteries, including those feeding the brain. In a younger body, vessels might absorb that shock. But in an older adult, where arteries may be stiff, narrowed by plaque, or weakened by time and illness, that surge can rupture a vessel or knock a clot loose. I remember a man named Walter Graham, 81, a retired carpenter from Pennsylvania. Walter was strong for his age, proud to stay active around the house. One afternoon, he reached to lift a box of gardening tools from the garage floor. He paused, gripped the handle, and didn't exhale. Seconds later, he collapsed. At the hospital, he was diagnosed with an ischemic stroke. A clot had broken free and blocked a key artery in his brain. His blood pressure had surged in that brief moment of effort. Walter survived. But today, he walks with a cane and speaks slowly, his once quick wit dulled by the damage. It changed his life in a moment, and it was preventable. No one told him that holding his breath while lifting could put his brain at risk. You can still be strong, but your strategy has to change. Breathe through the movement, use smaller loads, lean on tools and support, ask for help. Caution isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And if lifting can spark a stroke, imagine what happens when just standing up sends blood away from your brain. Let's explore that next. 4. Sudden standing exercises. Standing up from a chair is one of the most routine movements we make. You do it after finishing breakfast, folding the paper, or answering a knock at the door. It seems harmless, even helpful, especially since many balance programs encourage seniors to practice sit-to-stand drills without using their hands. But here's what most people don't realize. Rising too quickly, especially without pausing or support, can quietly trigger the very kind of stroke that so many older adults are trying to prevent. The issue lies in how your body manages blood flow. When you stand up, gravity immediately pulls blood down toward your legs. A younger body reacts in an instant, narrowing vessels and speeding the heart to push blood back to the brain. But after 60, that reflex can slow or falter, especially if you're dealing with high blood pressure, on certain medications, or even mildly dehydrated. In that moment, your brain may go without enough oxygen. And if your blood vessels are already inflamed or narrowed, it doesn't take much for a clot to form and lodge where it shouldn't. I remember a woman named Elaine Morris, 78, a retired librarian from Vermont. Elaine had always been sharp, active, and mindful of her health. Following advice from her physical therapist, she practiced rising from her chair without using her hands 5 repetitions each morning. It felt like progress. But one morning, after standing quickly to reach for a glass of water, she paused and said to her husband, "I feel off." Moments later, her right hand dropped, and she couldn't speak. At the hospital, scans confirmed a left-side ischemic stroke. Her hydration was low, and the sudden shift had sent her system into crisis. That morning drill had unknowingly pushed her too far. Elaine now walks with a walker and relies on speech therapy to communicate. A simple motion, done with the best intentions, changed everything. That's why it's so important to move with awareness. Use the arms of your chair, pause before walking, let your brain catch up. Dizziness after standing is not just aging, it's your brain calling for help. And if a movement as simple as standing can carry this risk, what happens when you go for a walk in warm weather without realizing your brain is quietly drying out? That's where we're headed next. 5. Walking in heat or humidity. Taking a walk can feel like one of the simplest joys in life. It's a way to clear your mind, stretch your legs, and connect with the world outside your door. For many older adults, it becomes a daily rhythm after breakfast, after lunch, a few quiet laps around the neighborhood. Doctors praise it, family encourages it. And rightly so, walking is a powerful tool for keeping your heart and brain sharp. But what most people don't realize is that after a certain age, the rules quietly change. And if you're not paying attention, something as routine as a summer walk can quietly set the stage for a stroke. The danger starts with dehydration. As we grow older, our sense of thirst fades. You might not feel thirsty until it's already too late. Add to that the effects of common medications, diuretics, blood pressure pills, heart med sand. Your body starts to lose more fluid than it can afford. So, when you walk in warm, humid weather and don't hydrate properly, your blood volume drops. Circulation slows. Your blood thickens. This thickened blood, a condition called hemoconcentration, flows sluggishly through your vessels. And in arteries already narrowed by age or plaque, it's only a matter of time before a clot forms. That clot can travel straight to the brain. I treated a patient named Robert Hayes, 82, a retired accountant from Alabama. Robert was steady in his habits. Every afternoon he walked the same 2 blocks no matter the season. But in late August, during a week of heavy humidity, he skipped his water. "I didn't feel thirsty," he said. The next morning, Robert couldn't lift his coffee cup. His speech was jumbled. At the hospital, he was diagnosed with a left-sided ischemic stroke. Blood work revealed severe dehydration. His blood had thickened overnight and a clot had formed. Robert survived, but not unchanged. He now uses a walker and his memory isn't as sharp. And all of it began with a walk he thought was helping him. This isn't about fear. It's about respect for your body, your age, and the quiet signals it sends. Because if heat and dehydration can do this, what happens when you twist your neck too far without warning? Let's talk about that next. 6. Neck circles or jerky neck rotations. It's one of the first stretches many seniors are told to dogently roll the neck to ease tension. You wake up feeling stiff, maybe after sitting too long, and instinctively you tilt your head side to side or slowly trace a circle with your chin. It feels comforting, almost instinctual. But what's rarely mentioned, and what I've seen far too often in my work with older patients, is that this simple movement can quietly cause a serious injury deep inside your body, an injury that may not show itself until it's already too late. The vertebral arteries run through the bones of your neck, feeding blood to the back of your brain, the area responsible for coordination, balance, and alertness. These arteries are small and delicate, not meant to be twisted or stretched. But each time you roll your neck in a full circle, especially with force or repetition, you're placing tension on these vital vessels. And for someone over 60, whose arteries may already be less flexible or slightly weakened by age, medication, or inflammation, that stretch can cause a tiny tear. When that happens, your body responds by forming a clot at the injury site. If even a piece of that clot breaks loose and travels toward the brain, the result is often a posterior stroke. These strokes are among the hardest to detect early and some of the most disabling. I'll never forget Mr. Harold Reyes, age 76, a retired cabinet maker from Georgia. Every morning after breakfast, he'd stand in front of the mirror and do slow, controlled neck rolls, something he believed helped him stay loose and mobile. But one morning, as he turned his head in a smooth arc, he felt a strange snap, then a wave of dizziness. Within minutes, he couldn't speak clearly and stumbled to the floor. The scans showed a tear in his right vertebral artery and a stroke near the base of the brain. That one stretch changed the course of his life. This isn't about fear, it's about care. Your neck carries lifelines. Protect them. Because if something so gentle can do this, imagine the risks when your heart is pushed past its limit. Let's talk about that next. 7. High-intensity interval training. There's a new trend making its way through senior centers, YouTube channels, and even wellness plans covered by Medicare HIT, or high-intensity interval training. It promises quick results. Short bursts of fast movement, followed by rest, all wrapped up in just a few minutes a day. For younger people, it can offer some benefits. But for older adults, especially those over 60, HIT can quietly push the cardiovascular system past its safe limit. And what begins as a well-meaning effort to stay fit can end in a hospital bed. On paper, the approach seems simple. March in place for 30 seconds. Rest. Do squats or arm raises. Rest again. Repeat. But the older body doesn't always handle those pressure spikes the way it once did. With every round, your heart rate climbs, your blood pressure rises fast, and your arteries are asked to expand and contract under force. That may be fine for someone in their 30s, but for someone with decades of wear, maybe some arterial plaque, a history of high blood pressure, or even just a few medications in the mix, it can set the stage for something serious. I once treated a man named Frank Delgado, age 76, a retired electrician from New Mexico. He was dedicated, practical, and always took care of himself. His granddaughter had set him up with a HIT program she found online, tailored for seniors. He did a short session each morning, modified jacks, squats, light jumping. It made him sweat, and he felt proud. Until one morning, just after cooling down, Frank collapsed in the kitchen. He couldn't lift his arm, and his words came out scrambled. The stroke had hit his left brain. Scans later showed a clot in the carotid artery, likely released during the sudden pressure of that morning's workout. Frank now uses a walker. His memory isn't what it was. He thought he was doing everything right. That's the hard part. He had good intentions, but his vessels couldn't keep up. You can stay active without pushing your heart to the brink, because the next risk we'll uncover might seem even more harmless, something as routine as stretching before warming up. But even that, done at the wrong moment, can be dangerous. 8. Stretching before warming up. We've been taught our whole lives that stretching is healthy, that it helps with flexibility, improves circulation, and prevents injury. So it makes sense that many older adults start their mornings, their walks, or even their golf rounds with a few long stretches. Reaching for the toes, holding a calf stretch against the wall, pulling the arms overhead, it all feels safe, almost elegant. But what many people don't realize is that for an aging body, stretching cold muscles before warming up can quietly set the stage for something serious, even a stroke. Here's what happens inside. When your body is still waking up, your heart rate low, your muscles cool, and your blood vessels slightly constricted, suddenly forcing those muscles to lengthen places real pressure on arteries that may already be stiff or fragile. Stretching before movement demands that your vessels expand before they're ready. And if those vessels are calcified, narrowed, or under strain from years of high blood pressure or diabetes, they don't respond well to sudden changes. The mismatch causes circulation to fluctuate. Pressure builds in some areas, drops in others. For older adults, this can lead to something called vascular turbulence, unstable flow that makes it easier for blood clots to form near damaged vessel walls. And once those clots break free, the brain is often the first place they land. One of my patients, Miss Lorraine Fielding, age 77, a retired nurse from Vermont, learned this the hard way. She followed a video for senior stretching one morning before her regular walk. It seemed calm and gentle, but she hadn't eaten, hadn't hydrated, and hadn't moved yet that day. She did a long forward fold and some deep hamstring stretches, then headed outside. Halfway down her driveway, she felt unsteady. Her speech faltered. She was rushed to the hospital, where scans showed a small clot had blocked circulation to her brain's left side. Lorraine survived, but now uses a cane and struggles with memory recall. She told me, "I was trying to stay healthy. I had no idea I was putting myself at risk." So here's the takeaway. Warm up before you stretch. Let your circulation ease into the day. Because it's not just your muscles you're stretching, it's the arteries that feed your brain, and they don't bounce back like they used to. Now let's look at something even more subtle. The danger that comes when your sense of balance fails, and why unsupported balance exercises might be the silent fall waiting to happen. 9. Balancing exercises without support. Of all the exercises recommended to older adults, balance training is often seen as one of the safest. It's meant to prevent falls, build core strength, and maintain independence. And when done properly, it absolutely does. But what many don't realize is that unsupervised balance exercise, especially without a stable support, can quietly set off a chain reaction that ends in a hospital stroke ward. As we get older, the systems that keep us steadier in our ear, our vision, the nerves in our feet, don't respond like they used to. A small wobble that was nothing at 45 can be dangerous at 78. Balancing on one leg, using a wobble cushion, or even doing heel lifts on a slick floor may sound simple, but without something solid to hold on to, just one misstep can lead to a fall. And the real danger often comes after the fall itself. You see, when the body hits the ground, even if nothing is broken, it enters a kind of emergency mode. Hormones flood your system, blood vessels tighten, and if you're already dealing with age-related vessel stiffness or inflammation, your body may start forming clots in response to the trauma. These clots can travel, and if one makes its way to the brain, the result is a stroke. That's exactly what happened to Mr. Henry Collins, 80, a retired architect from Georgia. He was in good shape and proud of staying independent. One morning, he decided to try a balance video a friend had sent him. He stood on one leg, just like the instructor said, but without a chair nearby. His foot caught on the corner of a rug, and down he went. He said the fall didn't even hurt that much, but by evening his speech was slurred, and he couldn't lift his left hand. A scan revealed a clot in his brain, not from the impact, but from the body's response to it. Henry recovered, but his left side remains weak. He later told me, "I just wish I'd done the same thing, but next to the kitchen counter." That's what I want you to remember. Balance training matters, but it must be done near a sturdy surface, with care, and with full awareness of how easily a fall can start something much bigger inside the body. Because sometimes it's not the fall that harms you, it's what your body tries to do in response. And that next chapter in protecting your health starts now. Over the past few minutes, we've looked closely at 9 everyday exercise simple things you've probably done for years without realizing how your body's changed with time. Neck rolls, toe touches, intense bursts of movement, balance drills. These aren't bad in themselves. But when matched with an aging circulatory system, slower reaction times, and stiffer blood vessels, even familiar movements can quietly become risky. Because aging changes the landscape. The arteries that used to flex easily now resist sudden pressure. The heart takes longer to catch up after you stand or bend. And the brain, more sensitive than ever, doesn't handle oxygen drops, dehydration, or inflammation the way it once did. What used to feel like a harmless stretch at 40 can, at 75, create the perfect storm for a clot or bleed. And once that stroke happens, nothing is quite the same again. As a doctor, I've watched this play out more times than I wish. People who were doing their best, who cared, who tried walking into my office full of energy, only to return days later unable to form a sentence. I've looked into the eyes of spouses who never imagined they'd become caregivers overnight, and I've heard it again and again. I thought I was doing the right thing. That's why I'm here, not to alarm you, but to open your eyes to what's underneath the surface. Because staying independent, clear-headed, and mobile isn't about doing more, it's about doing smarter. So now the shift begins. Not away from movement, but toward the right kind of movement. Gentle, thoughtful, backed by breath, by preparation, and by the wisdom of your years. You are not fragile, but your body does ask for a different kind of care now. You've earned that wisdom. And by honoring it, you keep what matters most, your independence, your voice, your place in the world. So today, take that walk, do that stretch. Just make sure it's done with awareness, with preparation, and with respect for the body that's carried you this far. Because every step from here should not only move you forward, it should protect the brain that lets you live fully. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect and share one thing you've learned and plan to apply in your own life. Let's support each other on this journey toward embracing these truths. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life on your own terms.